Hi, welcome to our latest bonus chat. This is from our pod recording looking back over Leinster v Harlequins. If you missed it, you'll find that on Apple, Spotify, and all the other usual places. Now that the European fields have been whittled down to just 8 teams, it's time to focus on the contenders for the final in Cardiff, or should I say fi-NALS, as Connucked are also in serious contention for a spot in the Challenge Cup decider. So while we will, of course, be harping on Leinster v Glasgow towards the end of the coming week, our panel are first going to have a quick look at some of the other quarterfinals, starting with Hugo, who's going to cover Bordeaux v Munster and Northampton v Castres.
Yeah, so that Bordeaux v Munster one, well, firstly, it's a surprise it's happening at all. I think going into the round of 16, after the pools, it was largely expected that would be an all-French affair, Bordeaux versus La Rochelle. La Rochelle have since kind of gone on a pretty bad run now, 3 months without a win, and that continued after the game against Munster at the weekend. I thought Munster were very impressive. They had their kind of moments where it wasn't quite going right for them. They were maybe a little bit lucky that Teddy Thomas in particular seemed to completely forget how to score a try at a crucial moment. But Munster have now got quite a few of those key players back from injury that they've been missing for a long time. Players like Klein, like Abraham, like Casey, and they looked. It was one of their finest performances of the season. They really dug deep. They really kind of backs against the wall performance, and they came out on top. It was very impressive. Whereas Bordeaux kind of again went into the Ulster game. Certainly, I was expecting them to put a cricket score on an Ulster team that has had its fair share of problems, just as Bordeaux did in the reverse fixture earlier this season. And actually, Ulster really got at them, despite Bordeaux getting out to a 21-0 lead early on, and you're kind of thinking, oh God, this could be a really ugly match. Ulster kind of came back into it and really rattled Bordeaux. Actually, had a couple of tries not been ruled out, correctly ruled out, but slightly unfortunately. That game could have been even closer than it was. Bordeaux have some of the best attacking players in the world, and they do score just astonishing tries from nowhere. They will punish any mistake. But their maul hasn't been great. Their defense was actively poor today and has been for much of the season. They were obviously had 50 points stuck on them by Toulouse in the top 14 final last season. So Munster will go in. Bordeaux will be favourites. Absolutely, they're favourites. They were their top seed for a reason. They are at home, and they'll expect to win this game. But I think Munster will be emboldened. They will know what they have to do to get it. Bordeaux, Munster are a better side than Ulster, and if Bordeaux play the way they did today, today, and Munster play the way they did yesterday, then that game could be a lot more interesting than I think many people would have expected at one stage this season. On the other side, you've got Castres versus Northampton. Kind of interesting that it's probably, maybe this is unfair, but probably the two weakest sides left in this tournament, which might at least make for a fairly interesting game. Northampton are at home, which is why I think they'll probably win this one. They've not been as good in the Premiership this season as they were last season. They've lost a few critical players, Courtney Laws probably most importantly among them. But they've still got some very exciting players. They've got some very exciting attacking players. After a kind of slow start against Clermont, they really did put them to the sword. Finn Smith is really looking like the real deal. He's been incredible over the last few months, as is Tommy Freeman, who is one of the kind of world's in form wingers at the moment. And then you've got Pollock in the back row, who looks like one of the most exciting young talents in the world. So Northampton they're not the team maybe they were last season, but there's still a lot of talent there. Castres, while they don't have maybe as many kind of star names as some of the other big French teams, they are very solid. They're very well run, very well organized. But they're not the team away from home that they are at home. They've barely lost a game at home all season, but their record away from home is not as good. They were a little bit lucky to get away with it against Benetton this weekend, albeit they were down a man for most of that game. But I feel like Northampton might have the edge, and either way, I'm not expecting whoever wins that game to make it much further than that. But should at least be an interesting game and real kind of competing styles as well, which always makes for an interesting matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that Munster, when I got a bit mischievous online, I kind of slagged off that they beat them by 1 point while we beat them by 2. But seriously though, that was a really impressive performance from Munster. I particularly like the drop goal by Jack Crowley. That was a serious 5-point lead. It didn't even cross my mind, and to be out there and to have it. And of course, as Leinster fans, we all know about what Jack Crowley drop goals can do. But it was a really, really good call and good execution there, and a great win, another great Munster away win in Europe. We know they've done it many times over the years. It'd be a big challenge for them to do it again in Bordeaux next week. But like you say, I mean, they can definitely put themselves in with the shout. And of course, the Northampton Castres, I think that's on our side of the draw. If we do get through to the semi-final, it could possibly, without jinxing anything, be a repeat of a previous semi-final against Northampton. But we'll see how that goes. So listen, thanks for that, Hugo. Now we go to Ciarán, who's going to look at Connucked State with Racing 92, as well as the mouth-watering Champions Cup quarterfinal between Toulon and our old friends Toulouse.
Yeah, I suppose to finish off the Champions Cup, first of all, Toulouse, Toulon, it's probably the closest of the quarterfinals, I'd say, in terms of who would be favourites. I think Leinster Glasgow isn't Leinster being overwhelming favourites, but I think the fact that Toulon are at home in this one makes it a bit more interesting. You look at both sides had to come from behind to win their respective last 16 games. Toulon playing not the strongest Saracens team, but had to come back from 22 points down, and they absolutely blew them away in the end. And again, this is like I say, it's good. Leinster put 62 points on Harlequins. Toulon just kept scoring tries by the end. I think there were something like 12 tries in the game. I was looking at their record in 2025. They played 10, won 7, lost 3. Been fairly good. I think they're kind of outside of the top 3 favourites for the competition, which are Toulouse, Bordeaux, and Leinster. I think Toulon are probably the next best side there, and I think I think if Toulouse are going to slip up on their way to the final, and that's no disrespect to Bordeaux or Munster, who they may play in the semi-final, I think this would be the time it could happen against a sticky Toulon side, who who they did well in the group stage. They came through the pool well. They have Jaminet back, who obviously was banned for just idiocy at the start of the season. They have a good squad. One thing I'd say about Toulouse is it's hard to go on 2 fronts, and it's made even harder by the fact they're missing Antoine Dupont, obviously, and now Ange Capuazzo is injured. It got injured against Sale, so I think that'll make it very difficult for Toulouse to, manage both the top 14 and Champions Cup, and you just wonder. And maybe the same could be said for Toulon, but you just wonder if French sides had to choose between the European Cup or the top 14, would they choose the European Cup necessarily? That being said, Toulouse are a fantastic side. They're probably the best side in world rugby at the moment. Certainly were last year. They're, while Bordeaux are probably the best attacking side, Toulouse are kind of very strong defensively and in attack as well. They had a bit of a blip in the first half against Sale Sharks, but you could see they just turned on the style. It was 28-0 in the second half, and that's what champions do. They just turn the game around. So I'd expect Toulouse to win, but I wouldn't entirely write off Toulon. I think if Toulouse aren't going to make the final, I think they're more likely to fall here than they would be to Bordeaux or Munster. But at the same time, yeah, I'm gonna say Toulouse. I still see them making the final, and hopefully Leinster joined them there, and it's a different result than last year. But it's yeah, I think that'll be a tighter game than people maybe expect it to be, because Toulon have kind of been quietly good this season. And then for the Challenge Cup quarterfinal between Connacht and Racing. Connacht have been very on Connacht like in this European campaign. They've been very good. They won their 4 pool games with a bonus point. They One thing I'd say about them is they have a tendency to let teams back into games. I mean, there were times against Cardiff where it looked like they had the game won and they kept letting them back in. There were times against Benetton and the URC a few weeks ago. They looked like they had the game won and again just let them back into it. So, I think Mac Hansen said it's frustrating watching them. As imagine playing for them. I think that is the case, that Connacht just they are a frustrating team to cheer for, in the sense that they tend to go ahead, they tend to do things well, but then they tend to let the other side come back into it. So normally this is the kind of game you wouldn't expect Connacht to win. Challenge Cup quarterfinal against a French team with a bit of European history. But at the same time, Racing aren't having a great time of things. They've played since 2025 started. They played 10, won 4, lost 6, 11th in the top 14. They're actually not safe in the top 14. So that would make me wonder how strong they're actually going to go for the game against Connacht. Because on the one hand, they're probably not going to qualify for the Champions Cup through the league, but at the same time, they aren't necessarily safe in the league. So they may be more focused on next week's or on the following week's top 14 game. Their wins in the Champions Cup, they dropped down from the Champions Cup to the Challenge Cup, came against Harlequins and Stormers at home. And as we've seen, Harlequins, little great shakes, and Stormers obviously travelling with a weakened side from South Africa. They were the best ranked Champions Cup side to drop down, but I'm actually going to back Connacht here. I think it's their best chance of probably getting a Champions Cup place, because I don't think they'll get one through the URC, and as well, I think it's they're the best chance they're going to have for a European run in a long time. I wouldn't be confident enough to say it's 100%, but I think Connacht have the winning of this game. But at the same time, it's the kind of game Connacht could be frustrating, play well in, and let get away from them. But yeah, I'm going to say the game's there for Connacht to win. Racing haven't been particularly good this season, and they're not safe from the top 14. So I think Connacht might benefit from there being not as much to play for in the URC, and might just make it another good weekend for the Irish sides next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just on Toulouse, I mean, it was just a quirk of this crazy format they have for the Champions Cup that they ended up in the same pool with Bordeaux, but because they're both French teams, they didn't play each other. So Bordeaux got maximum 20 points, but Toulouse got 19 points, which blew away most of the other teams in the other pools, but they could only get a 5th seed with that. So that could have put them in a floater in this draw, and that's why they're away in this quarterfinal. But with the way French, the top 14 is, and in Europe and things, it could be a bit of a leveler when it's these two teams playing each other. So that's going to be a fascinating quarterfinal there. But Toulon didn't have things their own way against Sarries, against a very depleted Sarries team, but they managed to turn it on in the second half. While Manon looked on, and he's still waiting to be unleashed into that competition. So that'll be interesting. As for Connacht, I think the entire rest of the country is behind them in the Challenge Cup. I don't think there's any doubt of that. And they've got a really good chance Saturday night at the Dexcom Stadium. They've got Racing coming in, but Connacht are good vein of form. They've got the reward of it. If they do win that, they've got another home game as well in the semi-final. I think it's against Ospreys or Lyon. So really, really good opportunity for them if they can keep up momentum. So definitely lots of good rugby there viewing for sure. Not just Leinster's game on Friday night.